WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, X, and our website, www.wvtcdetroit.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. Thank you for tuning to WVTC Radio Detroit and the Community Bell Show with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner Edna Bell. Stay tuned for insightful information Detroiters will find valuable. Text a friend and tell them to watch with you for news you can use. And now, your host, Edna Bell.
Hello, it's Monday afternoon, so it must be the Community Bell Show. Thank you so much for joining us on this sunny Monday. And has been a pretty warm last few days. Strange times, strange times. It's for us to be breaking records. You know, last week when we had 67 degrees, that last time we had anything that warm was in 1966. And how do I know it was 1966? That's the year I got married. But I want to tell you, long time ago, but it's warm. We love it. And today it's sunny. So I'm so glad you decided to join us for the Community Bell Show today. We have a very special guest with us today. But before I introduce our special guest, just a little bit, this is Black History Month. So he's going to talk about a lot of Black history. I'm just going to talk about a little. But the little bit I'm going to talk about is, do any of you know Do any of you know who Nathaniel Sonny Wilson was? Sonny Wilson was known as the honorary mayor of Paradise Valley, owned a restaurant over in what's called Capitol Park now. Sonny was a great guy, probably about as tall as I am, but boy, did he carry a big stick. Great guy, but look up Sonny Nathaniel Wilson. You would love to read about Sonny. And one of the things that you would read about is a video called Paradise Lost, Paradise Found, that was produced and directed and written by my own brother, Mr. Ted Talbert, and was up for one of the 16 Emmy nominations he received. So just wanted to bring up Sonny Wilson to you. Now for our guest. We've got a wonderful guest today. This young man probably knows more about Detroit's Black history than most folks, or many folks, or any of the folks you would ever hear. Mr. Ken Coleman, welcome to the Community Bell Show. How are you? We are so glad to have you with us.
Hmm.
Um, as always, thank you for coming on the show, and then particularly because of Black History Month, wanted people to hear and to see someone who knows probably more about Black history than many, many people in this area. Ken Coleman has written a book. He talks about it. He gives tours. So if anybody is interested in seeing some of the things that he talks about, he does give tours. Talk to us, Ken, about what's going on with you, and talk to us about Black history in Detroit.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity every time, Commissioner Bell. Great to be on the broadcast. As a matter of fact, I have a presentation coming up this Saturday.
Yes, I'll be there.
On All right, Saturday, February the 17th. I'll be talking about Black Bottom and Paradise Valley at a free event. It starts at noon. Again, it's Saturday, February the 17th. It's at the Dr. Levon M. Sheffield Bridge Center Library. That's a building that Horace Sheffield has acquired. It's an old library, old Detroit Public Library, beautiful space. I've been there a couple of times. And for people that know the west side of the city, it's on Grand River, just west of Livernois, a couple blocks west of Livernois.
Actually, it's one block west of Livernois, right
One
next to
block.
the
That's
gas
right. That's
station.
right.
How do I
Yep.
know? Because I used to work there.
Oh my goodness.
One
Okay.
my first job when I was in college was with the Detroit Public Library, and that
Wow.
was one of the locations I went when I got married in 1966, and
Hmm.
we moved to that area. I
Hmm.
transferred to that location, and that's where I worked. And I could walk, and I walked to work. Would you believe it? I walked to work. We lived on
Mm.
Monica and
Oh yeah.
Elmhurst, and I walked from down the street. It was a great place to do it. I walked. It was great, and I used to work at that library. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful building.
The
Absolutely beautiful.
building is the building is still very beautiful.
Yes.
I was there a couple of months ago for a community celebration, and Reverend Sheffield is managed to keep that building really strong and vital. And so the opportunity to present Black Bottom and Paradise Valley history. You talked about Sonny Wilson a few moments ago.
Mhm.
Sonny was one of the leaders in that community, and of course, your brother chronicled a lot of that history as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as I was thinking, I've got to find the video and the documentary he did on Paradise Valley,
Hmm.
Lost, Paradise Found. I know it's in some of the boxes of stuff I have of his. I haven't come
Hmm.
across that one yet, but I'm sure it's in there. But it
Yeah.
was a great, great video. What are you doing though, as it relates to Black History Month, Kent? Besides
Well,
the event that you're having on Saturday at the Sheffield Center.
I've been blessed, quite frankly, Commissioner, to really be part of or help lead several events. Actually, tomorrow I'll be in Lansing for this.
You're muted, Ken. I can't. I think you might have hit a button that muted you.
No, he clicked a button. Tell him he clicked the button. He muted his own self.
Got it?
No.
We still don't hear you. We don't. The wonders of modern technology, everyone. Ken is working on his headset to make sure that we are able to hear him. I think we might have clicked something
Yeah.
that
Don't look for something on the phone.
that muted him
On the phone.
on the phone or on your on your keyboard, maybe.
Yeah. He clicked the button.
Because we need to hear everything you're going to say. We need to hear all of it, and we still don't hear you.
Right. Let's go to the phone.
We're gonna go to we're gonna go. Got it. We'll be right back while we get our technical difficulties taken care of. We're gonna hear this wonderful song, everybody.
And he can come back. Go out and come back.
I'm black and I'm mad. I'm black and I matter. God created me to be who I am. Oh, I'm black and I matter. Yes, I'm black and I matter. God created me to be who I am. It doesn't matter how you view me. God created me for who I am. It doesn't matter what you say about me. I'm happy with who I am. It's not about color. It's not about race. It's God's amazing grace. Red, yellow, black, or white. We are precious in His sight. Oh, I'm black. And I matter. I'm black. Yes, I matter. God created me to be who I am. Oh, yes, He did. Oh, I'm black and I matter. Look at me. I'm black and I matter. God created me to be who I am. So glad He did.
And we've got the technical difficulties worked out, and we're back with our guest, the Mr. Ken Coleman, Detroit historian. Hey, Ken.
All right. How we
All
doing
right.
now?
We got it. All right.
I think it was the headphone. Oh, the headphones are probably out of juice. I think that might have been what was happening.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Okay. But I can hear you well.
Wonderful. And we can hear you and all that good stuff. So go on and talk to us.
Yeah. So,
Black History
yeah,
Month.
really excited about several events, Black History events that I'm either blessed to lead or be a part of. And so really throughout the city, Detroit and Lansing tomorrow, I'll be in Belleville later this month doing a presentation about the history of Black murals. Popular really now are murals that have been created across the city on exterior buildings and the like. And so doing a history of that form of art. So really every couple of days, Commissioner Bell, blessed with the opportunity to share African American history in Detroit.
I am so glad that we've got someone who knows African American history, doesn't just act like they know it, but has lived it, knows it, and has had the opportunity to study it and to present to others what has really gone on in our city. We started off African American History Month last Monday, and our guest was Mr. Adam Ollier, who is a candidate for the 13th Congressional District seat in Congress. And we started the program off talking about Charles Diggs, who was the first African American congressperson from the state of Michigan. And how 70 years ago we had a congressperson, and now we don't have anyone of our Black representing
we've as Adam, I'm sure Adam pointed out, great history with Congressman Diggs and Congressman Conyers, to be sure, and for many years having two African Americans represent Detroit.
Yes. Just really sad that no longer is the case, but hopefully we'll be able to rectify that this August.
And I really love the work that Adam is doing. He might have talked about this, and I know he working on an effort to have a statue of Coleman Young on Capitol Hill. Every state gets two statues, and that Adam's doing well.
Oh, that is wonderful. That is wonderful. Wouldn't that be great to have that? Especially to have it done, and when we go there in September for the Congressional Black Caucus Education Weekend, it would be great to be able to have that there. So we're going to wish him well in those efforts, and we're going to wish him well as he runs for election and to represent the city of Detroit in the 13th Congressional District.
Indeed.
Tell us something about Paradise Valley in Black.
So Paradise Valley was really the African American business and cultural hub. It was located on just outside of downtown Detroit. If you can think about it, and if your listeners can imagine the space where Comerica Park sits today and Ford Field, home of the Detroit Tigers and the Detroit Lions. That was about the size of Paradise Valley. So it wasn't very large. But between Paradise Valley and Black Bottom, in 1942, the Detroit Urban League reported that there were 350 African-American businesses in those two neighboring communities, Black Bottom and Paradise Valley.
And which, and people have seen this, I'm sure, but if you've seen the movie The Green Book, and some people think it's fiction, but it isn't.
Right.
The Green Book is a real living animal. I have one. Ted has one. I have it now. And this one was dated 1944, 45, 46, somewhere in that time frame. And the bellman on the trains literally gave out those books to African Americans who were traveling to cities in the North so that they would know where they could go to get a haircut, to get their
Right.
beauty shop, to get their clothes cleaned, to all of those places that were safe for African Americans to go to. That was the Green Book, and the Green Book for Detroit had to have been at least an inch or two thick,
Yeah.
and cover to cover, filled with
Yeah.
all sorts of African American businesses.
A listing of Black-owned businesses, and so that 350 number that the Urban League reported in 1942 was just in those two communities.
Yeah.
We by that time there were African Americans moving on the old West Side. You talked about that, that experience, not being too far from growing up there and working in that general area. African Americans in Coney Gardens,
Yes,
and further east on the Lower East Side. This, Commissioner Bell, but Detroit's Black population doubled between 1940 and 1950. And so by 1950, there were 300,000 African Americans who lived in Detroit proper, and that was double from the population in 1940.
yes, and as you said, they came here for jobs.
That's right. That's right.
Jobs, educational opportunities, and some safety and respect for their families.
Absolutely. My grandparents, both sides of the family, came here in the 20s and 30s, early 40s actually. Were part of that great migration of African Americans who were coming here, many of whom to work in the automotive industry, but others working for the federal government, maybe at the post office, becoming educators, librarians, teachers. And so this was Detroit was the fourth largest city in America during that time.
Yes.
So it was a major destination place for Black folk.
Absolutely. My grandmother came here from Arkansas during that time in the 30s. And then my parents came up here in the early 40s. And
while these and so when the Black Bottom and Paradise Valley community continued to grow throughout the 1940s, but through urban renewal, city government really destroyed those neighborhoods, and it displaced a lot of African American people. Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, I was born in Paradise Valley in the old Trinity Hospital on Burner Street that no longer exists. And my parents lived on Macomb, and that's where they took me home to.
And Macomb, a lot of those streets don't even exist anymore. Chestnut and Macomb doesn't go all the way through anymore.
Exactly.
It's downtown, but it doesn't go through the Lafayette Park area the way it used to. But J Street, Jay, many of those roads were streets in the Black Bottom neighborhood. And then by the start of the 1950s, city government seizes that land to build a new neighborhood that community we know today as Lafayette Park.
Exactly. And interestingly enough, I served on and still serve on the Wayne County Economic Development Authority and the Brownfield Development Authority. And a lawsuit was just settled, I want to say back in 2013, 2014, somewhere in that time frame, because when they built I-75, instead of going straight down, they did a huge curve and went around Hamtramck and went into Detroit and destroyed the homes, the Black homes in Detroit. And they were sued.
Yeah.
And the lawsuit was just settled, I want to say 10, 15 years ago, because I sat on the board who received the information and we had to process that. But I find that amazing. People just don't know it.
Yeah.
You see that big curve on I-75? That's going around the Hamtramck community, going and knocking out the Black community. That's what that big curve did.
Absolutely. It and you look at freeways like the Lodge, and you wonder, why does it have all these twists and turns? The section we call it with the Wyoming curve.
Yes.
75 does some of that as well, and that was city fathers, and quite frankly, in those days they were all white men.
Yes,
deciding what neighborhoods to go into and not go into, right?
exactly.
That's why you have some of the twists and turns.
Mhm.
Think about I-96 when the Davidson was built in the
Yes.
70s.
Mhm.
There were communities, there were many of them were largely white that successfully kept themselves off of that track.
Mhm.
But it was the
Exactly.
Black communities that were
Ex-
destroyed.
Exactly. But the good news is that lawsuit was filed because
Mhm.
of discrimination, and they won.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and then the federal government had to build homes,
Mhm.
build back homes in some of those areas, and provide those people who would have been ancestors who would have lived there,
Mhm.
provide them with either low interest loans or no interest loans to build back that community.
The late federal judge Damon Keith
Mhm.
presided over that case for many years,
Yes.
particularly in the Hamtramck area.
Mhm.
And there have been some remedies, and even today we're talking about how to repurpose I-375, and so that's a big conversation that's happening today.
That is a huge conversation. And the more I think about it, the more I just don't know how you do it.
Yeah. Well, huge community conversation going on. It's a roads project to start.
Mhm.
It's the Michigan Department of Transportation, and
Mhm.
so it's never going to be, or wasn't thought to be, a project that was going to repurpose or recreate the businesses that were in Black Bottom and Paradise Valley. But there are men and women who are saying, yeah, let's use this as an opportunity to redress what was really a horrible set of actions
Absolutely.
60 and 70 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Ken, when you do your tours,
Mhm.
what are some of the places you go to on the tour?
Yeah. Various sites. The Ossian Sweet Home on Garland Street
Mhm.
on the Lower East Side is a popular destination people want to see. But also that old Lafayette Park and Paradise Valley community. We've been able to have a historical marker placed in Black Bottom now that
Yes.
tells that story in short in Lafayette Park. And there's also a walking tour, Commissioner Bell. I don't know if you've seen it. It's
I've
about 2
not
years
seen the
old now.
walking tour. No.
Yeah, and it actually has you walk up to a couple different 6 kiosks, and through this technology with these smartphones, you can hear oral histories from
Really?
men and women who grew up in the community, or certainly were direct descendants of people who grew up in the Black Bottom and Paradise Valley community. So we often take folks there, school age children. I do a lot of block clubs in the summer, and obviously I do a lot of family reunions
Mhm.
in the summer. We obviously go to the Gateway to Freedom statue at the foot of Hart Plaza. That tells the story of the Underground Railroad. That's really popular. We've gone to Baker's Keyboard Lounge.
Yes.
we've
Yes.
we've driven by the old Bluebird Inn.
Mhm.
And that there's a restoration project going on there at the old Bluebird.
Yes. Yes.
And so the Burwood Wall in
Mhm.
Northwest Detroit, people don't know that story. And so we and usually in about a 3 or 4 hour tour, we usually hit about a dozen key noted spaces.
Wonderful. And have you hit the Royal Oak Township story?
No, but I'm not. But I actually do want to do that because, interestingly enough, my father's parents they lived in Royal Oak Township for about
Mhm.
10 years before they moved on Martindale on the west side, the old west side. And
Mhm.
so I've learned a lot more about that community over the years. The old Carver School District, African American school district there. And so there's a strong African American presence in Royal Oak Township, and
Absolutely.
still is.
Absolutely. Now that is where I grew up. That's where
Okay.
my parents moved when they left
Hmm.
Black
Hmm.
Bottom. They moved to Royal Oak Township. My
Yeah.
father was working at General Motors in the
Yeah.
factory, and we moved to Royal Oak Township. And I went to George Washington Carver Elementary
George
School.
Washington Carver. Yeah.
And
It's interesting. A lot of people know about Royal Oak Township, but
Mhm.
Ferndale also had a small Black community.
Mhm.
Ron Carter, the great jazz bassist, lived there for a little bit before his family moved into Detroit proper. But yeah, I really want to do more research, more tours that share more history about African Americans in Oakland and Macomb County, quite
Absolutely,
frankly.
absolutely. And in the Royal Oak Township and the projects, of course, we were bused from George Washington Carver Elementary School down to Northern High School because Oakland County would not let us walk to Ferndale High School.
Yeah, no, it is. That's a history that we really should spend more time sharing.
Absolutely.
And getting those oral histories while there are people still here who can share them.
Yes, yes. And, and we were bused past Mumford because we could have walked to Mumford. We were bused past Mumford, Mackenzie, Central.
Yeah, imagine that. That's like 6 or 7 miles, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's crazy.
And we ended up at Northern High School. And every morning, 9 at the time, they called them DSR buses. But 9 buses would pick us up and take us to Northern High School. And every day, 9 buses would pick us up at Northern High School and bring us back to Royal Oak Township and drop us.
Well, I love that part of town. Going up to the Burwood Wall has kind of reintroduced me to that particular area. And you have a really strong community just south of 8 Mile, in the Wyoming area, not far from Royal Oak Township at all, of course. Really just over on the other side of 8 Mile.
Yeah, and Royal Oak Township started at Wyoming and went west to Myers. On the east side of Wyoming was the Ferndale piece. And those kids who on that side who went to Grant Elementary School, they could go to Ferndale.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you would have had Higginbotham.
Yes, Higginbotham.
And I wonder why they didn't send you. I wonder why they sent you all the way down.
Well, Higginbotham was an elementary middle school.
Okay, so you're saying as you got
it was the same, and we were graduating from and it went to Carver went to the 8th grade.
I see.
And I think one of the blessings are we had all Black teachers, Black principals, and so we saw that early on when children in other parts of Detroit and parts of never saw that, and so we were accustomed to that, and we were accustomed to those teachers making us toe the line and really actually do lots of work that probably was not done in some of the other schools.
I spent a lot of time going through Old Michigan Chronicles, and they would have a section or a page, not a section, but obviously a page or so of Carver community news or Royal Oak Township news, and read about the school, all Black school district. And we didn't learn that stuff in my K-12 Detroit public school experience, but I'm glad that we're sharing more of that information.
Absolutely not. And I don't know if you remember Reverend Lonnie Cash.
Of course,
Reverend Lonnie Cash was president of the school board.
Okay, yeah.
So we are talking about going way back.
Yeah,
he was on the school board. We had our own school board, had our own police department, and our own fire department.
Yeah, I over the years I've met people who grew up in that community, and I always thought it was kind of interesting. You got Oak Park, and was kind of a neighboring community, which was probably all white, or certainly largely Jewish.
Yes.
And at least in the 40s and 50s, maybe 60s. And how did those communities coexist is always interesting.
Wasn't that interesting? When we managed, things seem to go quite well.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear about all the things that happened when we were at George Washington Carver Elementary School and went on to Northern High School. And ironically enough, the George Washington Carver Elementary School, middle school children succeeded extremely well.
Yeah,
extremely well.
And that's the same. And we see that a lot in the history. It's the same thing with the kids at Miller.
Yes.
Down in Black Bottom, the kids on the west side. They went to the Sampsons and the Webbers and and obviously on the Northwestern.
We exceptionally well became presidents of the graduating classes and received all sorts of accolades and awards from that one little group of folk who were denied the opportunity to walk to a school and had to be bused to a school. But it really is quite ironic that we were able to. George Shirley
Hmm.
Northern High School.
Yeah.
Bill Button went to Northern High
I
School.
Northern. He lived on Hague for at one point.
Mhm.
But in fact, I went to a Northern High School 50th anniversary, a class reunion,
Mhm.
class of '67. And I think they had like 66 and 67 graduates.
Mhm.
And George Shirley was one of their special guests.
Mhm.
By that time, he was a well-renowned vocalist, but
Yes.
he, as a member of the community, he was one of the fathers of the Northern community, and they
Absolutely.
celebrated him
Mhm.
there.
Melvin Franklin, who sang with the
Mhm,
Temptations,
mhm.
sang
Yeah,
in the choir with me
yeah,
at Northern
yeah.
High School. So,
Well, that whole area,
mhm.
you talk about the tours. One of the things that people really love, particularly people that don't know Detroit, they might be new to Detroit.
Mhm.
I show them that within 1,000 feet of each other, Smokey, Diana, and Aretha lived.
Yes.
Two on Belmont, one on Boston, but they lived
Uh-huh.
right around the block from each
Right
other,
around
right
the
down the
block, the
street.
north end.
The North End. Yeah, yeah. It's an incredible history. Yeah. And that North End community really becomes, a really strong middle class African American anchor throughout the 30s and 40s, after many people begin to move out of the Black Bottom community just because of the lack of size and just opportunities opening up for African Americans to live in other parts of the
Absolutely.
city.
It's really that in itself is really quite a history to be told for those who didn't grow up in Detroit. And it's always interesting to me sometimes when I hear newscasts and they pronounce some of the streets
Yeah,
and they pronounce them in strange ways. And that's
yeah.
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah,
can tell us how
I think about if you think about that Oakland Avenue strip.
Mhm.
Sidney Barthwell had a couple drugstores,
Mhm.
in that area, in addition to other parts
And
of
the one
the
in
city.
Conant Gardens.
Yeah, absolutely. And so entrepreneurial spirit was certainly strong. Even the numbers business.
Oh boy, oh boy.
I can do a whole segment on that
And,
one.
it's interesting you mentioned that because Ted was working on a series on the numbers before he
Hmm.
passed, and I just
Hmm.
find some of the research he had done on that because
Yeah,
the numbers business put a whole lot of folks through college
no question.
and opened a lot of businesses
No
for
question.
people. And
Well, the late Arthur Johnson, who led the NAACP a couple different times, I know you know him well.
yeah,
He wrote in his memoir, and we used to have him on the radio show a lot and to talk radio. But he pointed out when he got here in 1950, the country was really going through a recession,
hmm
and the NAACP was struggling to pay his rent
hmm
for its headquarters. And numbers bosses, some of whom were millionaires,
yes,
made sure that the
yes, they were.
NAACP door stayed open.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned that because for those of you who don't know, the numbers is the lottery
the
today.
lottery. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it was illegal
Before
when
1972.
people were doing
There you
it.
go.
And people, but today it's legal and it's called the lottery.
There you go. Yeah. No, but and it's part of African American life in Detroit, and so I have a passion. I've had a passion over the years. Ted, your brother, was certainly a mentor of mine, and so my passion is chronicling this history when we have opportunities to.
I see Larry is saying he's got a few things to say.
I'm reading the chat.
Many of us have something to say about the numbers, the numbers business. We do remember, and the numbers folk took care of a lot of people.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
I think about people like John Roxborough, who was a co-manager of heavyweight champion Joe Louis,
Yes.
but also ran a multi-million-dollar
Mhm.
numbers operation in the 1940s,
Mhm.
and coming out of Depression years in the 30s and throughout the 40s. These men, and most of them were men at the time, but they were stalwarts in the community. They were civic minded. Again, they would help the NAACP. Roxborough coached the youth baseball teams,
Mhm.
and Joe Louis lived with him for a while.
Mhm.
uh, but stalwart. And also he was, because white folks didn't sell black people life insurance. We've got life insurance companies that
That's
are
right.
African American life insurance companies that are also part of that proud business heritage.
That's right. Lewis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
That whole, I mean, there's so many. We have lost a lot of landmarks, but there's so many landmarks that I think these tours are important to take school age children, and I get a lot of colleges and universities history classes and the like. They love the tours too. You think about this town; it's 139 square miles, and at one time we had 1.8 million residents. So this is a pretty big city. As African Americans begin to move to other pockets of the city, and obviously southeastern Michigan as well, I'm just always concerned about that history being lost. And so to talk about Paradise Valley and Black Bottom on Saturday, again the 17th at noon at the Bridge Center on Livernois. Is a great opportunity to share that history.
Absolutely. I plan to bring my grandson because
Great.
I'm pretty sure these young people don't know a lot of it. I mean, we can talk about it and they'll hear me talk about it but for them to hear it from a different voice always makes a difference. Always makes a difference. But there is so much that we need to find a way to impart to our young folk.
Indeed.
So that they understand that they didn't just get what they got because they're so wonderful.
Well, I'm excited about, I've worked with Dr. Nikolai Viti, the Detroit Public Schools Community District General Superintendent. I've worked, and as others have, I've worked to get more local history included in lesson plans in the K-12 curriculum. Cass Tech High School has just started an AP African American History course, and so I think today the education that my son is getting, the education that your grands are getting, I think they're going to be better off and better, learn more, know more than I did when I was their age.
Exactly, because we didn't get it. As a matter of fact, we had a Dick Macon, who was my geometry teacher at Northern High School, but he was also a Tuskegee Airman. And he would talk to us about, the typical algebra geometry problem. If a plane leaves at one time and the train leaves at another time, when do they cross? So we were saying to him, and he would talk about how he flew in World War II. And of course, we had never heard much of that. And so we said, sure, you flew a plane, Mr. Macon. Sure you did.
And I think you were probably on the school board when the district created Davis Aerospace, right?
Yes. And that was one of the reasons. And I said to them, I had a teacher who actually was a Tuskegee Airman. And we need to provide that kind of experience to our young people so they can grow up and be pilots if they choose to do that. So very, very important.
That's right.
But he became one of the persons that my brother was very close to, and one of the persons in his video, An Eagle Should Fly, which is about the Tuskegee Airmen.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing history, and a lot of them published in my first book. A lot of those brothers were from the South, but ended up here in Detroit. African Americans. I think at one point, Congressman, the late U.S. Senator Carl Levin recognized about 150 African American men who were Tuskegee Airmen just from Michigan.
Yes.
So obviously, Coleman Young was on that list, and and many other names that we know. But that's history. That's history as well.
And my goal is to talk about it all the time. Talk
Indeed.
about it all the time, and that's
12 months a year.
Talk about it all the time, and we need to make sure that whoever didn't hear it in February can hear it in March.
That's right.
Or June or April or whenever
it
is.
That's the idea. I think that's why your broadcast is really important. And again, I'm seeing more and more efforts through school districts that are imparting more local history. There just wasn't really I think in a lot of ways we handed our history down orally.
Yes.
And so if you had a great teacher, or you were part of an after school program, maybe in the neighborhood, you may have gotten a lot of that history. But, I think, we want to see it more formalized too.
Absolutely. And the churches were a big part of that history
That's
also,
right. Indeed.
because oftentimes the churches were the spot where the history was taught, because it couldn't be taught in regular schools, and churches took up that mantle and handled much of that. Ken, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to have you on. I'm telling you. So we're going to have to do this regularly and just have you come back and talk to us about what you're doing and talk about the African American experience, because there's so much more to talk about.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. And again, this Saturday, February 17th, it starts at noon. It's free. Reverend Sheffield said there'll be plenty of food there. The admission is free. It's at 9928 Grand River. And as you pointed out, it's just one block west of Livernois.
Yes, right next to the gas station.
That's right.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Take care. And we'll see you Saturday. Okay. And thank you, audience, for joining the Community Bell Show. It's always good to have you. Good to have wonderful guests like Ken Coleman, who knows his business. He does it, and he does it well. And we're just blessed to have him in our community. We'll see you next Monday, 4:00, Community Bell Show. Be sure you're there.
Thank you for listening to Community Bell with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner Edna Bell. This broadcast was brought to you by WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, our website, www.wvtcradio.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. If you've enjoyed this broadcast, tell a friend to tune in. We'll see you next Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern to the Community Bell Show, right here on WVTC Radio Detroit. You're listening to...
Hey, my name is Joe Smith. I'm a filmmaker here in Detroit, and I watch WVTC and listen. Watch and listen. You got the eyes and ears, both.
You're listening to WVTC Gospel Radio Detroit, and we're flowing in the Spirit.